Hi friends, I'm Shauna. Welcome to the channel. Today we have a great video. This video is inspired by a comment that I got from Sylvie. It's going to be on the screen, and she asked for me to bring a video dedicated on which habits I changed, which mindsets I changed, and how I made those changes. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about mindset changes or mindset shifts, and I will talk a little bit about the how in this video, just a little bit. I know this video is already going to be very long, and I'm going to bring the habits in a separate video. And then when it comes to contentment with stuff, it's already planned out for next week. I'm going to have a video specifically dedicated to how I became content with my stuff, because I realized in looking at this video that I've kind of shared my thoughts in different places. And there is not this concise video that's here's how I did it. So there's going to be a little bit of how in this video, kind of smattered in with each one, and there will be, I promise you, there will be more of the how coming later. My view is that if we want to change the way we think, like if we genuinely want to become content, like a 20-minute video is likely not going to do it. Like we need more than that. We need more substance than that. So more content will be coming. Maybe it's not what you wanted to hear, but it's what I need to make it happen. So let's get into it. The first mindset shift is accepting the belief that being content will never happen through stuff, ever. And I think there's maybe two facets to this. So the first is this idea that I think social media and corporations have really sold us, that we can be happy through stuff, that we can buy our happiness through things. We can become content and fulfilled through buying new and beautiful things. One of the reasons why this happens, in my opinion, is that we are often sold a lifestyle or a promise through things. A company wants to sell you a coffee cup. They might also be selling you this idea of this relaxing and content or serene morning routine. Or if a company wants to sell you a candle or an aromatherapy, like essential oil diffuser, they might sell you this idea of like inner peace and calm. They're selling you habits and lifestyle choices along with their product, as though buying that product will make those other things happen. If you buy this coffee mug for your morning coffee, you will now have this really beautiful, content, relaxing morning routine that makes your day better. That is what is being sold with the coffee cup. The coffee cup might make having your coffee more enjoyable, but I promise you that will never be the thing that has the biggest result in your life. Like the actual change from that is likely minuscule compared to the other things I'm going to be talking to you about later. And sure, things can make us happy, but they will never be the thing that makes the biggest difference, that actually makes us content with our lives. Having a beautiful cup might make you, let's say that the advertisers are right, that it does make you content. It will only make you content with maybe your surroundings, maybe with what you have. And at most, if they're right, it'll make your morning routine better. But it will never make you content with who you are as a being. Stuff will not do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing about stuff, or I guess what is a different question, is how do you be content with what you have? This is a video that is coming next week. This was the harder mindset shift for me. That was just life experience, how that happened. I never thought about being content with my things. If you don't think about it, it's harder to make it happen. I think, at least for me, it had to have been a conscious choice. I think the short answer for this particular section of this question is that in my no-buy, the goal was to stop buying makeup. And I think in essence, like maybe the sub goal or the secret goal I wasn't even aware of when I was in my no-buy year was like, how do I be content with what I have? I know I was framing the question wrong. The biggest mindset shift was changing the question from how do I stop buying things, which is how I feel like the entire community treated no-buys, to how do I be content with what I have. Changing the question will make you ask yourself different things. It will make you even brainstorm different ideas. How do you stop buying stuff? How do you stop buying stuff? We'll give you a different set of questions, a different set of answers or results or hypotheses than answering the question, how do I be content with what I have? And for me, once I did brainstorming about the difference, but also what might make me content with my stuff, what I learned about myself and personal contentment with stuff was making sure that everything I had brought me joy in some way, or not everything, but majority of things, or where I could, brought me joy in some way. Be it a color, a formula, a texture, application, user experience, something like that gave me some kind of criteria. But I also did a lot of self-reflecting about things like, how do I know what's enough? How do I come to understand that? And then the third thing is that in my no-buy year in 2020 and as well as 2021, I focused a lot on kind of figuring out how to shop better. And so my shopping criteria also became part of the contentment, in the sense of, if I only want to buy things that I can use up to completion, I only want to own things as well that I can finish, that I can actually use for the most part. And so while having certain shopping criteria helps me in the shopping process, which is one thing, but in the owning process, which is a separate thing altogether. I mean, they're related, but they're also separate. If I value owning things that I can finish to completion, trying to have as little overlap as possible, all of that makes me content with what I have. At the very least, it makes me less anxious about what I own. I was very anxious in 2020 because I had, let's say, like 10 foundations. How am I going to finish these? And I couldn't, because I couldn't finish them all in 2 years. That is not a thing that does not give me a makeup collection that I love or brings me contentment. Having things that I can use up and finish, and at the very least making me less anxious, helps a lot. Now, let's get into number 2. There is no such thing as a perfect anything. Hair care routine, home, wardrobe, etc. I spent a long time chasing the perfect thing in terms of physical stuff, but also in terms of people and relationships and myself. So it does apply to things other than stuff. When it comes to stuff, what we consider to be the perfect thing changes literally year to year, if not month to month. Think about what you loved for blushes in the last 5 years. How have your blush loves changed? Or how have your complexion products changed? How has your personal style changed? Maybe for some of you, it's not at all. Maybe for some of you, it's a lot. I know for me, in the last 3 years alone, just in terms of something like blushes, I have changed from powder to cream. Imagine if I got rid of all my powder blushes to only have creams, and then changed again to liking both and then buying powder. Even if I made my most perfect makeup collection with, let's say, 5 different blushes, let's say that was my perfect number, even 10, and then I decluttered 5, bought another 5 more, and then, do you see the slippery slope that happens here? And I think this is what happens with a lot of decluttering, is that our preferences change, and what we consider to be a perfect anything changes through our lives. And so we have to accept being okay with an imperfect, incomplete makeup collection. And in essence, meeting ourselves where we're at. And that's where the contentment comes in. Being happy with what you own because you own it and because it's yours, and taking ownership over that, versus having the perfect thing. Having the perfect thing is something that leads us to be chasing our tail. And for me, this has been the most frustrating with my wardrobe, because the moment I think about how do I make my best fall wardrobe, or how I make my perfect fall wardrobe, it has often led into overspending and also being really hypercritical about myself and what I own, and comparing it to other people. Comparison can just be the worst, because you will never be that person. You will never have that exact wardrobe. And even if you did, it wouldn't look the same way on you. And so chasing the perfect thing with stuff honestly is a waste of time, because we spend so much time and energy looking at new things, comparing things, trying to find our next perfect or our new perfect, that we could be doing literally anything else with that time. And if we're always looking for the newer, nicer next thing, we cannot, in my opinion, appreciate what we have. It gets in the way of personal contentment. This was a mindset that I had, but I wasn't even fully aware that I had it. And so when I went in to think about what does it mean for me to be content with what I have, like what does personal contentment with makeup, like how I be content with my makeup, or how do I be content with my wardrobe, this led me to appreciating what I have. Well, how do I do that? And that led me to here. And so this came about through self-reflection as well. And as well as my experience with my no-buy, because I think there's some self-preservation that happens where it's like, okay, I want all this stuff. I want all this new makeup, at least at first. It doesn't necessarily mean the whole year. There's a self-preservation where it's like, okay, I literally can't pay attention to all the new releases. And once you stop paying attention to all the new releases, then it's like, oh, wow, I find myself not wanting all of this stuff. And then I'm not comparing, and I'm not missing out other things or trying to change my collection or own different things if I'm just focusing on what I have. Now, when it comes to people, this also happens. I've found, instead of like chasing the next perfect thing, I found myself trying to be like chasing myself and being the best, not the best, the perfect me, like being perfect and saying the right thing and doing the right thing and acting in the right way. And also beating myself up so much for not being perfect, for not saying, doing, or being the right thing. And what I said about stuff applies here. We are literally wasting our time trying to be perfect. There's two things at work here. One, giving ourselves less kindness than we give to other people. At least me, I'm always much more kind to other people than I am to myself. I give them space to be imperfect people, but I don't give myself the space to be an imperfect person. I don't beat up on them for not saying the right thing to me or not being the right person for me or not doing the right thing or whatever, but I'm way more harsh on myself as number one. And then number two, people who are just as shitty to us as we are to ourselves. If people in our lives don't accept less than perfect from us, then maybe it's time we set boundaries as number one, or we lose the person altogether. I mean, whatever action seems appropriate for you, either or, we take it for you, because I know there's some people that even if we wish we could not have them in our lives, we're stuck with them in our lives. So setting boundaries is great. But I also think that we need to set boundaries with ourselves, y'all. If you would set boundaries with that mean aunt, then we have to set boundaries with ourselves. Like, dude, you can't talk to yourself that way. You can't beat yourself up about everything. You feel me? Like, we need to set boundaries. A lot of this does, whether it's coming from other people or the selves, I'll speak for me, so I'm not speaking for you. It's led me to like fix myself because I don't like myself. That's never worked, guys. The next mindset shift I had to make. Personal contentment is not about the little things. In brackets at first. This was my biggest mindset shift that came early that had a cascading effect. I really thought that personal contentment was all about what I talked about at the beginning of the video. Making the most out of your day. Like, if I enjoyed my life more, then I would be more content. To me, that is sound logic even now. Creating a morning routine to create not more time, but more enjoyment in my morning routine. To set myself up for success for the day. Creating a coffee ritual was one thing I talked about a lot in the early days. Getting dressed and putting on my makeup an experience. These are things that can help make your day better. That can help make your life more enjoyable, truly. If you ask yourself, how do I make being myself a more enjoyable experience? Or how do I make my everyday life or the mundane more enjoyable? Whatever is on that list for you would qualify for what I'm saying here. These things do help make your day better. It does help make the everyday and the mundane better, which does help with personal contentment. However, and this is a big however, okay? This will not do what you want it to or expect it to if you do not already have a good baseline. If your baseline of contentment is maybe like a 7 or an 8, I think this would be the thing to help push you over the edge, to help, that like icing on the cake, right? And I think that experimenting with these things might help you bring it up to like an 8, maybe a 9, depending. these will not help bring up your personal contentment level more than a few notches because they're surface level changes. Surface level changes bring surface level results. This is what I believe is the first part of contentment. You need to create a baseline first, a baseline of contentment, before you start making those icing on the cake changes. I was doing all this hard work. I'm like, what the hell? Why is all these nights I spent like crying over my journal? Like, why is it only bringing me up like half a point? Like, why? But you need that in order to get to the eventual baseline. That's all I'm saying. I cannot explain enough how much you need that baseline in order for the surface level changes to do their magic. For this one, if you're asking, Shauna, how did you make this mindset shift? Because I made hypotheses. At the beginning of my contentment year, I made hypotheses about what my contentment was going to look like. And I tried them. And when I tried them, I realized that they weren't really doing anything. Then it's like pivot and try again, pivot and try again. I think if you're not willing to make hypotheses about what contentment's going to mean for you, and then figure out ways to try and make that thing happen, I don't know that we would make that thing happen. And I also think that working on the surface level changes first, like getting that wrong right out of the gate, made me more willing to do the deeper work. Because it's like, okay, the surface level stuff didn't work. Now let's do less surface things. Had I jumped right into the deep end of like, let me go face my demons and let me go like do all of that, I don't know if I would have been as willing to do that, quite honestly. So that was the road I needed to take, but might not necessarily be the road you need to take. Number 4, this one to me is the most substantial mindset shift. And that is a willingness to accept the truth about yourself. And not just the truth about yourself, any truth about yourself. This encompasses a wide range of components. This could be past things that have happened to you, things that you've done, how that you've reacted to things, how you've hurt people, how people have hurt you, how you feel about relationships in your life, bad habits that you've had, the way that you've self-sabotaged, the way that you feel about your job or life choices that you've made. There's a lot of components about who we are as people and some of the choices that we've made or didn't make. And we feel some way about that. We need to, in my opinion, accept all of these truths about ourselves. So I think we need to do the acceptance phase of, this is the truth about myself in a non-judgmental way. Doing that in a way as non-judgmental as possible. As an example, I have played the victim. That's the truth. I've also told myself that I'm a family first person, and that is not true. Then we need to figure out if we want to do something about it and how we can do something about it. And then number 3, we need to feel our feelings about both of the things, because we can do as much non-judgmental noticing and accepting as we can, but we likely feel some type of way about whatever we're doing. And it's okay to feel our feelings about it. And we need to feel our feelings about it, as well as the choices that we do or don't want to make. I think that this is the most substantial mindset shift, because if we want to live lives that make us content, we need to be content with who we are, and we cannot be content with who we are if we do not accept everything about ourselves. If we're not willing to embrace ourselves and everything that has made us and hurt us and healed us, and we can't. I don't think we can be people who love our lives if we don't also love ourselves. This is a personal point of contentment that I don't think I can stress enough. I think is absolutely necessary to contentment. If you want to call this healing, which I think it is, then we need to heal. But it's not just healing from our past, which is why I think healing is part of it, but not totally. We need to accept ourselves and everything that we are. Before we can even get to how do I even accept myself, sometimes we just have this feeling about I'm discontent and that's all we have. We might not even know why. Like, I'm not happy in my life, but I don't really know which parts or why. This is exactly how I was feeling in 2020. There was a lot of work that led up to the let me accept myself for who I am phase. When I look back at the last couple of years, I felt like I was really content in university. maybe the most content that I've ever been in life, but also some of that just like from being young. But when I look at like, let's say 2016, 2017, I was also really content at that point. But that was largely because I was in a new relationship, which is exciting. I graduated university. I got into my top grad school. There was a lot of accomplishments in my life that allowed me to feel good about myself, which is great, but also distracted me from all of the other garbage that was happening. In 2021, when I removed a lot of the distractions, I realized, well, I'm not actually content. Like, I was willing to accept that. And then the figuring out why has taken a lot longer and, has been an emotionally tasking task. And when I am talking about accepting all ourselves for who we are, I had to be okay with what I might see. And I had to accept that I would see things I didn't want to see. And that would be okay, because I was willing to accept myself for who I am. And that's exactly what this is. I think that this is a mindset shift, because a lot of us have avoided seeing ourselves for who we truly are. We don't want to see how we failed ourselves, how other people have failed us, who has hurt us. We don't want to look at that because it's painful. But not just because it's painful, but because sometimes we know what's there, which is scary, but also sometimes we don't know what's there. We don't know why we feel like we're unworthy of love. We don't know why we don't like the way we look. We don't know why we aren't happy, or maybe we know that we're unhappy in our marriage, as an example, but we don't want to face the why. We don't want to face consequences for our choices either. We don't want to face the truths. A lot of us have spent our lives doing that, and I'm one of those people. But what I'm asking is seeing ourselves without judgment and accepting things as truth, like this non-judgmental noticing, if you will, or non-judgmental accepting. I don't know if that's like an oxymoron. Literally saying, yes, I have played the victim for years. I have hurt myself by doing this. I regret doing this. These, I would say, are facts about myself. And with knowledge, there's power, but also we know what the point of this is. It's to accept ourselves, yes, but also to change where we can change. And the changing, or knowing that the change should come, is what I think has held a lot of us back. And for me, that was my biggest fear, is learning what I needed to learn about myself. And not even like if I was willing to accept it or not, but I was afraid that I would learn these things and never make the change. I would know that there are people in my life or things that aren't serving me, and I was afraid that I would not change them, that I would not have the courage to change them. Accepting all the parts of ourselves, it's the ultimate act of self-compassion to say, I see you for all you are, and I love you anyways, or not even anyways, and I still love you. It's an act of embracing ourselves, but embracing every part of ourselves and loving ourselves, everything about ourselves. That is also the mindset shift, because I think a lot of us have spent a long time hating ourselves or part of ourselves, and that's part of why we don't confront it. Leaning into and wanting to love ourselves in all parts of ourselves, the good and the bad, and the way that we've hurt ourselves and the way that we're not kind to ourselves, or whatever the case may be, that is also a mindset shift. And I think I love to say it, we can't hate ourselves into being happy. We can't hate ourselves into accepting ourselves. We can't hate ourselves into contentment. And accepting everything about ourselves is how we accept who we are, but also how we begin to love ourselves, and how we can be content with who we are by accepting every piece and part of ourselves. The accepting part is a really big task. The way in for me was I just picked the easiest route. I started with the known. Like, I know that there are black holes in my life. There are things that I have chosen not to remember and I've been trying to forget. I started there because I knew it was behind those doors, and I knew what I was avoiding, which was way easier to tackle for me than trying to start off with the unknown. It's like, also, how do you figure that out? So I started off with the known, and I literally sat down and thought and wrote this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, or this is how I felt, or this is what happened, this is how I hurt myself, etc., etc. This is how I hurt this person. And I only wrote down things that I could know for certain were true. If I wrote down things that in the process weren't true, then they went into a separate category of things that I don't know are true. And then I did a here's how I feel about it. Like, I did this in chunks. I at that point wasn't interested in like how this affects me today or like what the result of this was. It was just, this is how it is. If you're somebody who's not done non-judgmental noticing before, it can be hard to separate your feelings from things, or what you believe to be true and what you know to be true. That is why I went with what I knew to be true first, because as an example, if something makes you angry, non-judgmental noticing would allow us to say, this makes me angry. The reason why I went in with here are the facts of the situation, and then also here are my feelings about the situation. Yeah, here's how I felt, or here's things I don't know to be true. It is because I have assigned beliefs or thoughts to these things that aren't true, that aren't reality. I felt like there needs to be a separation. Reality doesn't matter. Perception matters. How we perceive situations matter. And a lot of the times when people hurt us, it's how we've perceived situations that make things hurt the way that they do. And so for me to like be able to assess my feelings about things, and also what is truth and what is my constructed reality, I wanted to take these things apart. I also eventually, in the feelings, my feelings things, I wrote a letter to myself. I wrote a letter to myself that took ownership of things I needed to take ownership of, but also let things go, that things that weren't my fault, and I forgave myself. That was such a healing experience, and part of how I felt my feelings about things that have happened. Ultimately, I think that dealing with this with a therapist is probably a great idea if this is something that you can afford. And after you've accepted these things, then it comes the what do I do about it? I also think that we might have, or likely will have, feelings about the choices that are on the table. But I also think that we need to approach the choices with as much objectivity as possible. When it comes to, as an example, as I mentioned, this belief of being a family first person that wasn't actually true, there are options on the table. Do I want to be a family first person? Is this something that I actually want for myself? If so, how can I make that happen? How would that look? Would I want to put my brother and his partner first? Would I want to put my found family first? If not, if it's not something I want, how do I be okay with that? How do I learn to be okay with that? What are some of the beliefs and ideas I've constructed to make family first so important that makes me feel any way about it in the first place? We're allowed to feel ways about the choices that are in front of us. Like, we're allowed to feel upset, and maybe we can't separate the action from the emotion because that choice hurts a lot. But I feel like if we allow ourselves to think of these solutions and then process the emotions, or find a way as well to process the emotions, even if that's in the solution making scenario, like, we need to feel our feelings about it. I don't think that there's anything to be embarrassed about in being able to look at our past and claim that, but also being able to accept these things about ourselves, because this is part of who we are. This is who I am, whether we want to say it's true or not. And I don't want to hate the worst things about me. Number two, you can't change what you don't know. I can't figure out how to stop being the victim if I don't acknowledge that this is the case. Number three, these things have ultimately served us. I have played the victim because it has served me in some kind of capacity. Our bad habits, our self-sabotaging behavior, all of it has served us at some point. If we want to move on, if we want to change, we need to figure out how this thing has served us. Lastly, doing these things are mindset shifts, at least for me, because loving myself to include my whole self and everything about myself is really hard. I have gone 28 years without loving myself. And as well, wanting to be better, wanting to be my most me, wanting to be better out of a place of self-compassion is equally as hard and is different from my approach to change myself, which has always come from this place of you're broken, you need to fix yourself, and you don't need to do it all at once. You can ease your way in, start with small things, start with things that you know are there, and then go from there, but also do it with a therapist. Number 5 is a willingness to make yourself a priority. Notice how I said priority instead of put yourself first. I understand that there's a lot of people out there who have kids or other dependents in which you cannot put yourself first. However, this also doesn't mean that you don't matter. I personally had to frame putting myself first as being selfish, because that was what putting myself first meant, was that I was selfish. And I mean, I'm somebody who has the luxury of being able to put myself first majority of the time. And so I had to frame it as selfishness because that was like one of the worst things I could have been called. That is a large part of people pleasing and doing things for other people and meeting other people's expectations of me instead of figuring out or living a life that matched my own. And I lost most of the expectations I have for myself, and I'm now in the process of reclaiming that and trying to figure out what that means and living my life in that kind of way. And while this might not be your case where you're needing to be selfish or put yourself first means that you're no longer people pleasing, putting your desire for contentment as a priority is ultimately what I mean here. That could look like doing some of the accepting yourself, finding pockets each week to do that. Journaling each week to help you figure out what you want and who you want to be. For me, it has largely revolved around people pleasing, because people pleasing has been one of the larger distractors or things I've taken away from my personal contentment, because I almost lost myself in trying to please other people. Not almost, I did lose myself in trying to be other people. And I have picked areas in my life to start with. One of them was my wardrobe. I started there, and I do that most days. And even that can sometimes be hard. It is still painful in a lot of ways to live my life in accordance with the rules that I'm setting for myself, speaking my truth, saying exactly what I think and feel, saying no to things that I don't want to do, and also accepting that people will be mad at me and they will not like my choices. Unless I put my needs and desires first, my goals for myself first, I will continue to people please, and then I will continue to be discontent. From the mindset shift with this one is really hard, and this is the one that I'm still fighting with each day, which is I'm saying putting myself first, or making myself a priority, which is ultimately doing what I believe is best for me as much as possible, which is the opposite of what I've been doing for literal years. That's the mindset shift. The next one is a willingness to not settle and to know that I am deserving of happiness. I was willing to accept the status quo for a long time because it meant that I had people in my life. I had something instead of nothing. I had a family that was together instead of not having a family. Or I had a career plan or a career path instead of knowing nothing. And there was security in having something instead of having a whole lot of nothing. And this part of contentment, you are deserving of happiness, didn't start there. It started from, I want these things because I think they're right for me. Doesn't matter what other people say. And when other people said this isn't right for you, or you shouldn't be this way, how do you combat that? Yeah, you can say that they're wrong. I needed something inside of me to be like, no, this is right for you. And for me, that was, Shauna, you will not settle for anything less than being happy in the way that you feel happy. And that's where the mindset shift came in. And when you start thinking, well, what do I want for myself? What would make me happy? What would be the job or the relationship or the house or the family, whatever it is? What would be the thing that would make me happy? When you're doing things that other people don't like, you need something to get there, to help you get there. And for me, that was accepting that I deserve to be happy, that I deserve this, that it's okay to want this. Lastly is the willingness to be very uncomfortable and to push yourself outside of your comfort zones. Living the life that you're currently living is making you feel discontent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So the status quo is not working for you. And we've accepted things as they are until now. You will not become more content doing exactly what you're doing now. That, for me, was the hard pill to swallow. And part of it, a large part of it, is the fear of, I know I need to make the change. And I think as well, people, they get hung up in, I know I need to make a change, but like we don't know what needs to change, or maybe we know what needs to change, but we don't know how to get there. Like we know we're not satisfied with our job, but like maybe we don't know why. Sometimes if we're dissatisfied with our job, as an example, it's not just that the job sucks. Sometimes it could be, okay, well, I'm working way too hard at work, therefore I'm being overworked, therefore this job sucks. And maybe the reason why you're working so much is to avoid your demons, or to avoid being with your family, or to avoid something. And so your work will suck no matter what if you are going to be overworked, or if you're the type of person who goes to work as a coping mechanism or an avoiding mechanism, then you'll never be happy. It doesn't really matter the job that you have. A lot of us spend a lot of time avoiding being uncomfortable. That's me. And I have avoided living outside of my comfort zone for so long. And so this fear of I need to change something can be so consuming, instead of just like, okay, how about I maybe forget that I need to change for now? Let me just focus on why I'm discontent, and we can like baby step our way into eventually maybe changing. We fear the uncomfortability because change comes with it, right? When we know that we need to change, there's this heaviness of like, I have to do something, I have to act. Learning and changing is hard. Our life has likely told us that that is hard. And it's harder the older that you get, and it's also harder the longer that you've been in a situation. And when you put the time frame out of mind, like I'm not going to think about how long it's going to take. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to baby step my way into it. I think that's the how, and how you combat the uncomfortability and being in your comfort zone. And in a book that I was reading from Brianna Weiss, when she says that a lot of people don't change until they're at their absolute rock bottom. And, she advocates for not getting to your rock bottom and changing regardless. Unfortunately, maybe you haven't hit your rock bottom yet, and you're not willing to make the change before you get there. I mean, I hope that we can do that before we hit our rock bottom. But ultimately, sometimes like we need the impetus to change. And so maybe if avoiding your rock bottom is the impetus to changing, we know what uncomfortability brings. Trying and failing and facing your fears and facing your demons and facing the heartbreak and facing your past and facing yourself is so hard. At points, I felt heartbroken. I just wanted to stop. I just wanted to go back to the way that things were, because that was simpler and easier. And that's the thing, it was easier. The best things in life, the things that will make us who we are and allow us to be where we want to be and go where we want to go, are not going to happen because we played it safe and because we played in the status quo and we did what other people expected of us. We're not going to get there through staying the same. And so we have to change. When we accept that we will be uncomfortable and it's okay, then we can change. And if not facing ourselves in the mirror, like I mentioned, number 4, if the thing that's holding you back is being uncomfortable, then maybe you just need to baby step your way in. Okay, that was a big one. That was a big video. I'm very curious to hear what you are thinking in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts, honestly. These are really things I needed to accept, mindset shifts I need to make in order to change. And I would love to hear what mindset shifts you feel like you've made, that you needed to make in order to get where you want to go, to be content in your life. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I would love it if you would subscribe, and I hope to see you again around here soon.